Hey guys, welcome back. Just finishing up our Pennsylvania adventures, I guess we're calling it. Been a few different stops heading across Pennsylvania from Ohio, so heading east. Yeah, we got one more day here and we'll be into Delaware tomorrow and doing some things down that side and heading down the East Coast. But the first place we stopped in Pennsylvania was a Harvest Host location. If you recall or don't recall, the Harvest Host is essentially a program that you can be a member of for about $150 or something a year and have access to multiple different businesses and different breweries, museums, golf courses, wineries, and you get to stay if they have availability. It's usually no hookups, and sometimes there's fees and you can pay to hook up, or if they have electric they'll let you add on to that. But generally speaking, it's as you pull in, you're there for the night, and the day and the night, and then you pull out the next day, and it really helps when you're trying to get across the state or heading somewhere, and then also get to see some pretty cool experiences. So we stayed, we've done a couple Harvest Hosts before. We did a bowling alley, we did a drive-in movie theater, and this one was called the Lincoln Highway Experience, which essentially was a museum dedicated to the first transcontinental highway. Has artifacts, they had a bunch of different things, videos and movies kind of playing about the Lincoln Highway and when it was being built and all different stuff. Pretty neat. There's also a restored 1930s diner inside, and we were able to take advantage. There's a historian and a lot of information and history running through there. Plus, the museum grounds themselves were fantastic. There was no other campers there today. We were there, but they probably could have about 3, maybe 4, depending on the size of the rig in there if they wanted to, based on their rear parking lot. But it was really picturesque up against the hillside or the mountainside there, next to the river and where we were at, and it was very quiet. It was also one thing that was nice is at night with walking our dog and so forth, the parking lot was very well lit, so it didn't really create any security, at least the feeling of any security issues. But we did stop on the way over to the Lincoln Highway Experience. We did stop at a supercharger. I don't know I can't remember if I had to charge or it was more of I wanted to have enough juice so that when you're at this Harvest Host spots, you're generally boondocking. And yeah, we do have solar on the camper, and we also have a battery in the camper that we can run in the 3,000 watt inverter, so we can run the AC and everything off the battery. But at night, if there's no solar coming in, we probably maybe 3.5 hours of running wide open. So one of the great things about the Cybertruck is we have a 240 outlet, a couple 120s as well, but we can plug the camper directly into the back of the truck and operate as if we were on full electrical hookup. So I stopped at the supercharger just to top off, just to make sure we had enough when we were there in case we wanted to run overnight and not worry about where we're stopping the next day. And I think I got some footage of the stat. We were seeing about 878 watt hours per mile with that drive to the museum itself, to the highway experience. They also, I didn't ask about this, they had a big area, a large picnic area outside. I don't know if they hold some type of events or maybe just special occasions, or they potentially host or have any kind of music or something, but they had a large picnic table area. And another thing that was kind of cool, they had 2 electric vehicle chargers, J1772 I believe, or J plugs. I didn't use them. We didn't unhook from a camper. I technically probably could have if I needed to charge overnight, drop the camper, but we didn't need to. But they did have a really cool sign showing a 1914 map of the Electric Vehicle Association and charger along the Lincoln Highway. So it was pretty cool. I got some footage. I'll try to put it up. But real neat. Ultimately, with electric vehicles, people don't know that we had electric vehicles that far back, but we did. And then at the museum itself, there's a walkthrough guided tour and audio guided tour, I should say. There's really nice staff there that kind of get you started, but then they give you these little radios that you carry around and you can put up to your ear and tell them what room or what number you're at, and it'll give you the whole rundown. My son liked it. I think it's the first time he's done that. I know they exist all over. I think a long time ago we had something similar when I was out on the West Coast touring, when they were still doing tours of Alcatraz, something similar to that. And then at the end, towards the end of the tour itself, they have like a large pole barn edition garage area. They had a couple cars in there, pretty awesome. I think they had a Model T and a Packard. And then they had that 1930s diner, and there's some old signage, which was really cool. And the diner was really neat. They had a gentleman in there by the name of Wayne. It was kind of obviously a historian to his own right, but he was serving coffee and pie and ice cream and talking about the diners, and it was pretty cool experience. And I'm glad we stopped there. And I'm trying to think of what the cost was. Maybe it's $20 an adult, and then half of that or so for children for the experience, something, or maybe 15. Don't quote me on that, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terribly expensive. Plus, we got a pretty nice place to stay overnight. So after we left there, we had booked a reservation over at Cowans Gap State Park. I think it's Cowans. I guess it could be Cowans. If you know, let me know. But that is in Fort Loudon, Pennsylvania. It's a state park over, I think it's 1,000, a little under 1,100 acres. And it's largely surrounded by the Buchanan State Forest, just off Route 75. And we had booked this a while. Anyway, a unique campground. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But we did hit a supercharger on the way over on the toll road, and fortunately, how it was set up, we didn't have to unhook. I don't know if I got any data on the efficiency of that drive, but we were on the toll road for most of that run after we got off of this small little Lincoln Highway Route 30. And there, when you pull in to the campground, I know we got there a little later. It wasn't dark. We got there a little later in the day, but there was no one around. Of course, there were a couple other campers, but it was during the weekday. We got there, I think, on a Thursday, and they had a ranger station at the front, but it was closed, and not a whole lot of instruction. There was a sign that talked about, go to your site, and which was fine. So when you pull in, there's also a sign at the front of the campground and the host site to fill with water. So we pulled over there. The host wasn't around, and we filled with the water right next to that camper. I assume that could probably get backed up, though, because it's the first sign you see, and of course we've never been there. So we pulled over to fill up with our water. But when you drive further through the campground, there's multiple spigots on the side of the road for the same thing. Now, they don't want you hooking up. It's not a full hookup water line. They just want you filling your tanks and going. But there's, I don't even know how many, a handful throughout the campground that you're able to fill up. So if it's busy there, you want to keep going. We even had one in our front yard of our campground, or of our campsite, once we got up there. They had, well, I mentioned earlier, it's very wooded. It was very wooded, and I think we knew that a little bit. We were kind of in the mountains. Interesting enough, I believe we were, I'm trying to think what our elevation was down there. Maybe it was 1,200 foot above sea level, but on our way coming up and over the mountains, we were up over like 2,300 foot above sea level, and then back down in there, and we didn't have much of a signal, cell phone signal of any kind. But we were somehow able to squeak out some connection with our Starlink. I was actually really impressed. There was some type of update that happened while we were there, and I was very impressed that we were able to pull the internet from the small gap in some of the woods that we were located. It wasn't perfect, as you would be unobstructed out in the middle of nowhere, but it was pretty great. And they did, let me see what else here. Oh, that's one of the things. This is the first, and maybe this is not uncommon in Pennsylvania, because this is the first state park, or maybe other parts of the country. They had dog zones, or no dog zones, I should say. So where we were parked, we only could kind of walk our dog one direction, because all the streets beside us were no dog zones. I'm not sure 100% why, other than we did have some obnoxiously loud dog neighbors around our camps. Actually, the whole campground, there was a lot of dogs and a lot of barking, and I don't know if that's just an ongoing problem there. The campground itself was very loud. The sound carried uniquely up, and we were kind of up a little higher, so I don't know if it was all just rising up to us, but you could hear dogs all around and barking and yelling and all that. A lot more than I expected in the woods. But yeah, they had the dog zones. They also had down nearby in front, they have a lake, a really pretty lake and beach, beautiful, but the beach was closed, unfortunately. I think they had recently tilled it up. The sand looked very soft. There was a fisherman or two out there fishing the lake, but the beach and the swim areas were closed due to, I think it was coliform bacteria. There was a couple signs out, and then we were able to kind of check out. There's a trail that runs around the lake and through the campground, but it also connects to the Tuscarora Trail, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then they had some signage along the trail showing the local wildlife. My son thought that was nice. The lake is a dammed lake into a spillway, and then we were in the A area, I believe, of the campground. Then there was a B area side, and you could actually walk around the lake or walk to the lake from the B side pretty easily. We dabbled a little bit over there. And then they had playgrounds, of course. They had shelter houses. There was a nature center near the lake. I didn't go in. I had my dog with me when we were walking by, but it seemed nice. They had the door open. We kind of peeked in there. And then they also had on the lake like a boat, kayak, canoe rental. Sorry about that. I had to move indoors. My camera shut off. Said it got too hot. Anyway, so what I was saying is, down at the lake they had this boat, kayak shop. It sounded like it was a concession stand as well, with canoe rentals, store that was closed, unfortunately, and I assume due to the bacteria issue. And in between that, and then ultimately there was another main concession stand there at the beach, also closed. I think there's probably a lot going on there on a regular basis, or a lot of activity, or snacks, food, drinks, and something that'll probably bring in some more guests. So unfortunately we didn't get to take advantage of any of that, but the lake was pretty otherwise, at least to look at. And then we hit one of them there at the top of these peaks. If you ever been in the area of the mountains, they have these mountain houses. I think way back in the day, part of what we learned at the Lincoln Highway experience was they were probably old radiator shops and service shops, and some different drinks and stuff were back in the day when some of these old cars were trying to get up and over these hills and mountains. But a lot of these are bars and grills. We stopped, nothing to write home about, but typical bar and grill kind of food, fried foods and stuff. And of course they had drinks, pool table, thing like that, and usually some pretty good views from the deck area, so you can see up and down the mountain. And then from there, we headed over to Gettysburg, which is obviously a planned trip. The national battlefield site of the turning point of the Civil War in 1863. Gettysburg has a population, I believe, less than 9,000. It's not a huge town, but they get about 1 million visitors per year, as could be expected. And on the way over, we stopped and got lunch. A lot of the restaurants were small. Not a lot of parking, I would say. We were able to find one called the Appalachian Brewing Company, or ABC. Delicious food, large parking lot. Excuse me. We were able to park in there with our travel trailer and truck and get to experience lunch before we headed over to the center. When we pulled in, they had double-decker buses giving battlefield tours. We didn't take advantage of that, but it was pretty neat. And then the RV parking and bus parking was huge. It wasn't super busy when we were there. We had tons of room, no one around us, able to park. And then they had restrooms right there, a place to walk the dog. They had picnic tables, nice little spot. And then you could walk over to the Museum and Visitor Center, is where this is at. So the Gettysburg National Military Park Museum and Visitor Center. And they had all different packages. You could go there and not spend any money and kind of look around some of the exhibits. And of course, the monuments outside, which I'll get to in a minute, are free. But the Museum and Visitor Center did have different packages and experience, including the battlefield tours by bus. And they had the museum itself. We purchased tickets to go to the museum. Pretty neat. They had a lot of good history in there, a lot of things that photographs, and a lot of different different displays and exhibits showing a lot of different things going on, maps and so forth, videos, audio recordings of back in that time and so forth. But we went to the museum first, and then we took the walking path over to the monuments. And man, they have a ton of monuments all over, all spread out. But you get to see a lot probably in less than 2 miles of walking. Some people were driving and then getting out at the monuments. Others were taking the bus tour. But I think walking, we got to see a little bit more and got to get up close to some of them a little bit more, which was nice. And but I think worth a stop. I've never been to Gettysburg prior to this, and my family hasn't either, so it was a nice stop. And then from there we headed over, we had plans to head over to Hershey's Chocolate World in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Visitor center attraction, I think is what it's called. It's in southeast Pennsylvania, for those who don't know where Hershey is. And we stayed at a nearby KOA in Elizabethtown. I think how it's listed, it's Elizabethtown / Hershey KOA. Now, if you remember one of my last videos, we stayed at a KOA, and I was a little bit surprised that how poorly or it wasn't that well taken care of, we'll put it that way. And we wouldn't have booked another KOA, assuming that's how they all are, or with a bad experience and so forth. But fortunately for us, we already had this visit booked. This is a much nicer KOA. We have a pull through 50 amp site here. They have all different sites, but the campground itself, there's definitely pride and ownership here. A complete different experience, we'll put it that way. So I guess we'll go back and say not all KOAs are terrible. But we went over to Hershey's Chocolate World. They have free parking. Interesting enough, it was busy. Of course, we were there on a Sunday, but it was busy. Free parking 0 to 3 hours, and then it's $60 evidently. We didn't have to deal with that, but we went into the Chocolate World building, and it's like a Willy Wonka kind of experience. But we went over, there's a few things that you can walk around and buy stuff, and there's some free things, and then there's some paid experiences. We went to the first one. We had an appointment, was to design / create your own Hershey bar. I thought it was really neat. My son absolutely loved it. He did a little research, of course, as he does before we had gotten there, to know what all to expect. But you ultimately get to pick your chocolate and your toppings and watch it being made, and they give you this QR code, and you follow along the different steps and able to see the chocolate and the cooling tunnels. And then you get to design the package and the wrapping system, and then have it printed out, and at the end they give it to you and you can eat it. It was delicious. And my son absolutely loved it. And then there's large stores, all the candy you can expect, all the merchandise you can expect from Hershey. And then they had I think they call it the chocolate tour ride, Hershey's chocolate tour. Maybe it's actually a ride, a slow moving ride. It's free. This definitely was a Willy Wonka. There's a lot of animations and different things happening. It definitely gave the Willy Wonka vibe. Talking about the history and so forth, and Milton Hershey being kind of the Willy Wonka character of this. But I think worth the stop. There was a lot going on at Hershey's facility as well. From what I could tell, they had an amusement park that was separate, and there was a lot of other outbuildings, and then they had some kind of concert hall, or concert stadium I should say, that it seems to be booking events there too. So there's a lot more to going on in Hershey than just this area. But we were there about 3 hours, and got some chocolates and some different things. And my son, there's also, I think he did the Reese cup. You can kind of design your own Reese cup. It's not the same experience as the Hershey bar. It's long, but there's an assistant that works, and they'll mash up their ingredients and put together a large Reese cup. It's more of the shape of a pie. But my son was all over that, of course, and had a great time. So I'd say worth the stop, and probably if you're going to be in town a little bit longer, check out some of the other things they have going on at Hershey than just a factory tour. They had, like I said, it seemed a lot. You could probably spend a few days there to get everything in. But yeah, that's our Pennsylvania trip so far. Appreciate you tuning in and listening between the Lincoln Highway experience and the Cowans Gap State Park and Gettysburg, and then of course ending up with Hershey's Chocolate World. So we're heading east further. We'll be in Delaware tomorrow, and we got some things planned there, and State Park on the water that we're looking forward to, and some other stuff, and try to get some footage together and get something out when I can. All right, thanks everybody. See ya.